Welcome to the Nonprofit Thrivability section of Beyond the Blog. Hi everyone, I am Reed Corley, your producer and host. In this podcast, we will be discussing nonprofit thrivability, including speaking to representatives from the different initiatives. In this episode, we will speak with Michael Corley, Initiative Lead for TPF Administration, Center for Disaster Philanthropy, Net Hope, Margin and Mission Ignition, and Community Impact Optimizing Assets Beyond Initiatives. Michael will be giving us an overview of nonprofit thrivability and the initiatives that are associated with it. Please join me in welcoming Michael Corley. All right, Michael Corley, thank you for joining me to discuss nonprofit thrivability and the associated initiatives. So let's start out with the big overview. What is nonprofit thrivability?
Reed, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this initiative, and this initiative continues to evolve. Years ago, it was just MMI, and we'll talk a little bit about that, which is Margin, Mission, Ignition. And as the Patterson Foundation works to strengthen people, organization, and communities, you'll hear that throughout, people, organization, and communities. And these initiatives organically evolve. It's really a reflection on what our pulse out in the community is and what is needed. And MMI goes back to, emerging from the recession, the Great Recession, and nonprofits had their funding cut. And is there an opportunity to help nonprofits generate, in MMI's case, earned income? And so nonprofit thrivability is the umbrella of multiple initiatives, all about helping nonprofits align their mission while trying to strengthen themselves so they can deliver more upon their services. And so under the nonprofit thrivability umbrella, we have Margin, Mission, Ignition, which I just shared. We got Fueling Dynamic Fundraising, which actually started a couple of years ago coming out of COVID, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And we've got two that are budding right now. Advocacy, in light of the recent elections over the last few years, things that have happened here locally and even on a national level. There's an emergence of advocacy. What is it? What can we do in this sector? So the Patterson Foundation is listening to our funding partners, but also listening to our nonprofits in the community, and there's an appetite to learn a little bit more about that. So we've started that listening, if you will. And then digital optimization is something that it continues to just smack us in the face, right? With AI, with all different other opportunities. So we're hearing from our partners saying, hey, we might like to learn a little bit more about this. So in the broader scheme, nonprofit thrivability is an umbrella under which these four initiatives reside.
And maybe even to back up a little bit, thrivability is a TPFism. TPF has a lot of words that are very unique to TPF. How did thrivability come about? Maybe who thought of it that, if you know? And how does thrivability get associated with each of these four initiatives?
Well, that's a great question. And I'll tell you, if anybody invented it, it was Deborah Jacobs, our CEO. So she comes up with all these different types of names because she understands words are important. They mean things, and you've got to use them constructively. So the word thrivability obviously is a play off of survivability, but that is such a limiting term in the nonprofit space. Why just survive? We want nonprofit partners to do more than survive. We want them to thrive, to continue to grow, to make broader impact. So everything the Patterson Foundation does, and certainly within this initiative, is how do we help nonprofits thrive, the community to thrive, people to thrive. So it's much more positive wording. It's much more aspirational than just survive. And it forces you really to think differently and do things differently.
And you already talked about the four initiatives that are part of nonprofit thrivability, but how do each of these operate and support nonprofits in our region and support them in thriving?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start off with Margin, Mission, Ignition, which actually started in October of 2013. So it's been about 12 years now. And that started, like I said, emerging from the Great Recession and when funders had to cut because their portfolios, their endowments took a big dive. They cut the granting to nonprofits. And so nonprofits are really in a bind. And so Deborah Jacobs thought, how do we help these nonprofits capitalize on some of their intellectual property, some of their goods and services to actually create revenue by selling to the general public? And so Margin, Mission, Ignition was started at that time. Fueling Dynamic Fundraising really evolved out of COVID, and all of a sudden the world shut down, and organizations were really struggling with how do we raise funds. How do we take advantage? Maybe some opportunities out there. Coinciding with that was our relationship, Patterson Foundation's relationship with the Lilly School of Philanthropy. And so we wanted to determine how do we leverage our relationship with IU and that School of Philanthropy that is just, world class, and to bring that expertise into our community to help our nonprofits develop stronger fundraising strategies. And so that's how that's how that evolved. In advocacy, like I said, it's being kicked around now. And so as we're being responsive and listening to the needs of the community. And then finally, digital optimization. I'm only putting that at the end because that's still a work in progress in terms of what are we going to do with that? We really don't know what the community wants, what the appetite is, but we're hearing it. So Jennifer Abbott, who is going to lead that initiative, is going to embark on her listening tour sometime towards the end of this year.
So some have been around for over 10 years. Some are in the making. When it comes to things like digital optimization and advocacy, some of these newer initiatives, what makes them part of nonprofit thrivability and not underneath this umbrella of nonprofit thrivability?
Yeah, and that's interesting. So to the layperson, nonprofit thrivability could be capacity building to help nonprofits strengthen themselves. So right there's the tie-in with all of those. And it's more on the revenue-ish side, if you will. So it falls under that umbrella. And it just made sense as we were trying to align these initiatives that they come under one umbrella so that within these 4 initiatives, we can talk to each other internally as Patterson Foundation people and even the nonprofit community so that we can identify gaps to fill. We can understand what some organizations may or may not need and overlay any one of these initiatives on top of those gaps that they have. So it just made sense to put it under one umbrella.
And speaking about some of these external stakeholders, what should the external stakeholders know about these 2 current initiatives and these 2 up and coming initiatives?
Yeah, so they are not on a regular basis. So I guess a few things. One, so how do we approach these is typically it's a come all type of invitation to learn. And we'll send out invitations using the Giving Challenge, the Giving Partner Database as the database from which we send invitations to participate in these initiatives. That's why it's very important for everybody to have an updated updated information in the Giving Partner, and as well as the right contact person, because we use those contact names. So that's important. They're not on a regular basis. We don't have them necessarily annually. They run a little bit annually, but they will be invited. And we really encourage everybody to come listen to the free part, if you will, in terms of no expectations. Come and learn. And we do that. We'll open it up to every organization. Sometimes we'll segment by size of organization, and that's just so we can deliver the appropriate content to that size audience, if you will. And it's an appetite for moving forward. We don't do things from here's a 2-hour training session. It's a series of those education sessions to then do something deeper, ultimately as a cohort. We believe there's value in bringing nonprofits together to embark on this journey together. Even if they're working internally with themselves only to develop something, we will bring them together throughout the learning process because there's nothing like experiential learning from other folks.
Absolutely. Now, aiming this direction more internally in TPF, how should the TPFer support the efforts of these initiatives?
Oh, yeah. So because of the way the organization, I guess any organization is structured, we have people that oversee each of these initiatives. And so it's important that with so many TPFers, and we have 60, 70 some on in some form, fashion, or another, as they come across nonprofits that might be able to benefit from participating, we want to make sure we send an invitation to them, we know who they are. So that's probably number one, is just communicating to the nonprofit community that these opportunities exist, and then also providing feedback, when they understand or when they believe that some organization may benefit from participating.
And now to wrap this up, MMI, FDF, they've both been around for a little while now. What are some success stories you have heard from these initiatives that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah. So, and I know you're going to have future guests on that actually lead these initiatives. And so they're going to go into hopefully a lot more detail, because this is a great question. What we learned through Margin Mission Ignition, especially, that's been the longest one, as we've gone back to the folks that have participated, is not only the benefit of developing an earned income product or service and selling it. So there's unrestricted revenue that comes in. That's really big. But what they said was the discipline and rigor of going through the process and becoming more business-like, meaning when they get their training, their one-on-one consulting in this case, and they're working with Mike and Larry, and they're building a business plan. They learn about finances, they learn about leadership, they learn about marketing, all those aspects of running a business, including managing their board of directors, that it's really the ripple effect has probably been more profound and more beneficial than the monetary effect. We've heard this across the board. So it's really important for folks to understand that not only are you getting the benefit of the initiative itself, but all those ripple benefits of having experts come in and basically train and teach you how to run a specific aspect of the organization.
Wow. And we will be speaking with MMI later in these podcast episodes, so stick around for that. Is there anything, last catch-all question, anything else people should know about nonprofit thrivability that you have not yet touched on?
Well, I think, number one, it is a real thing. You can be thrivable as a nonprofit. We see it. Right here in our community, those nonprofits do exist. There are those that are in survivability mode, and sometimes it's a function of of what sector they're in, and we understand that. But the organizations that are thriving have leaders and boards that are creative. They're willing to take some risks. They're willing to try something different and put in the time and effort to make that transformation, because it's not easy and it's very challenging, especially for people who have moved up within the nonprofit ranks because of their passion, their heart, which is absolutely critical, and maybe not have the business skills. While that's a challenge, I tell you, going through an experience like this would certainly help them. And I'll also talk about fueling dynamic fundraising. And so the lifeblood of a nonprofit is raising money. I mean, whether it's grant dollars, whether it's donors, whatever. And so really a nonprofit cannot be effective, cannot get to thrivability mode unless it has a mechanism in place to raise funds. And what Sarah's doing over there, Sarah Leonard, who I know you're going to have on the podcast at some point as well, is really remarkable, helping nonprofits of all sizes develop their case of support and go out and raise money. And so it's, as I shared at the beginning, it's using the Lilly School of Philanthropy, that partnership. It's really helping executive directors, heads of philanthropy, fundraisers take their fundraising to a whole nother level. So I would encourage everybody to visit our website, to look at our social media, to know when these things are happening and recognize it's really invaluable to go through this.
It absolutely sounds like it. Michael, thank you for joining me on the very first episode of the Nonprofit Thrivability podcast series. Thank you for your insight, and we will see you later.
Hey, Reed, I really appreciate it. And if this is the first one, that means it's only up from here.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Blog. For more information, please visit thepattersonfoundation.com/beyondtheblog.